Week 2 is in the books, and week 3 is in the books. Don't know why I said week 2 first, but we had some ugly games. We had some good games, and the underdog pick generator is now warm. Let's talk about the week 3 slate, and let's dive into perhaps the best primetime game of the year so far. This is the Player Profiler Pick Em Power Hour, starting now. Welcome back to the Player Profiler Pick Em Power Hour. We are your hosts, Ahaan Rungta and Trevor Tipton. Back with, it's a mediocre-ish performance on the underdog pick generator from week 3. But if you look around the league, what happened with some of these games, I'm not going to take full blame because there was some weirdness going on, but there were some lessons learned for sure. Trevor, how are we doing? And I'm so ready to get into Thursday night football.
I'm excited for this Thursday night game. If I sound bad, guys, I apologize. I'm sick. I'm visiting Dallas right now. I have 4 nieces here that are 6 and under, and 2 of them are sick. So, of course, they got me sick. So I got a cold. This was a wild week fantasy-wise. Right, obviously the Dolphins throwing up the 70 burger. That Tyreek play last week was pretty easy in hindsight right now. Looking at that game, there were some interesting games. Philly on Monday night, I liked how they played finally. They looked better for me. I missed 2 5 underdog plays by like 2 yards because Pittsburgh is married to running Najee Harris instead of Jaylen Warren. It's funny. I put up a poll and I said, which is worse, watching Dallas make Zeke better than Pollard or Najee greater than Jaylen? And everybody said it's equally disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, we collaborate on a Bet Openly series with Billy Muzio, and may or may not have taken the Broncos to cover the spread as one of my picks for week 3. I can say by far my worst wager of my NFL betting career or whatnot. That was a donation. But besides that, there were a lot of other weird games as well. Eliminated from one of my survivor pools with the Cowboys. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have taken a team that is probably looking ahead to week 4 of the Patriots in hindsight, but that vision's always 2020. The Ravens losing to the Colts got me, I'll be honest. And one of the reasons our Zay Flowers pick didn't hit was, the kind of icky weather, but also Baltimore's offense just looked off from start to finish.
It was terrible. They looked bad. I mean, and Zay's getting the targets, right? Like, they're using him. His usage is fantastic, but man, like, you can see like they're struggling learning Todd's offense. Like, you can tell like they're having some growing pains with it right now. It's a little painful to watch.
Yeah. And overall for week 3, again, we did come out with our underdog picks, our early underdog picks on Thursday. And if you're following us in the Player Profiler Discord, we notify you guys when the picks go up early. And then we notify y'all when, the week is over and we take a look at the record. So week 2, we go 5-5. Then week 3, we go 7-6. But we're going to continue, collaborating on these together and improving them each week. And I mean, last year I was, is solely in charge of the underdog pick generator. Now this year it's good to have a second mind, to talk to. But last year also, I'm pretty sure there was a span of 7 weeks where I just kept bettering my record by 1 pick. So, I'm looking forward to continuing to improve together on that. And I think one of the keys was, even though we ended up with a kind of mediocre, 6-5 record, we were on the right side of closing value on most of these, right? So, for example, one of the picks we didn't hit, Monday Night Football, Van Jefferson, you had the under or the lower than, I believe it was 38.5 yards, and that line closed 6 yards lower. And then he had a donut going into the, I believe it was the third quarter. And
don't even get me started with that stupid catch.
Yeah, and the Tutu Atwell Van Jefferson situation was not one I was willing to die. I wasn't willing to die on that hill trying to guess that in week 3. But you were definitely on the right side of it, and bad result. But
if we're getting CLV like that every week, variance will win out, right? Like that's what we want, right? Like so for you guys who are following or watching over time, if we're getting that kind of CLV and we're getting that difference over time, it will come through. That's just how math in this works.
Exactly. Yeah, and seems like the reads were mostly fine, but I want to just briefly, before we dive into Thursday night football, which we're 2-1 on collabs with Thursday night football so far, and again, if you hit half of these, you're doubling your money each time, so you're going to be very profitable over the course of the seasons, right? So you're not going to hit every one. It's just not how it works when you're there's a reason you get to double your money on this, but good start so far. We're going to try to keep that train going, but before we get into that, I just want to touch on maybe one brief narrative or one, maybe player that stood out to you in week 3, and maybe some lessons we can learn going on as we're making these picks. Some at least one situation you're keeping an eye on going forward.
Yeah. So if Dalton's now Bryce Young practiced today, Carolina's offense looked way better with Dalton. So that's definitely one I'm going to be keeping my eye on. Is I want to see who's the quarterback there, because Bryce isn't ready yet. He's just not. Like you can see it. He's not there yet. I don't understand why they wouldn't use Dalton right now. Let Young learn behind them and go from there. We finally got Jefferson his touchdown. Olavi's a stud. Like that's just tried and true now. It'll be interesting to see though what happens with Jameis versus Carr, right? Can Jameis get him the ball? I don't know. The Bears are a walking, talking disaster that like the memes this week have been things you'd rather do than watch the Denver-Chicago game. Have been pretty funny so far. That's been, for me, a pretty big crack up. And then I'm really interested. I've been really happy with James Cook's usage. I've had some Twitter wars with a few analysts. I even tried to take bets down about, I'll put my money where my mouth is. So put bets down on him. I'm really excited with his usage. I'm excited to see where that goes. And sneaky, if we're talking fantasy, Josh Dobbs hasn't looked terrible.
I mean, you're not lying when you say Josh Dobbs hasn't looked terrible, and he looked great when I picked the Cowboys and Survivor this week. I was on Josh Dobbs' over in rushing yards, and that he, I think, burst out, I believe, a 40-yard rush, and the line was 13.5. So shout out to him for that. Josh Dobbs, probably better. I could name 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now that are clearly worse than Josh Dobbs. I think I can do that. I'm not going to per se, but I will touch on one of them who you just mentioned, which is Bryce Young. And I'll just say it. I think, I very, very rarely take victory laps before I very rarely take victory laps on rookies before the rookie season is over. I very rarely take week 3 victory laps in general. But I will make an exception here with all the people on Twitter that were telling me that Bryce Young is so much better than CJ Stroud. And if you see the tweets, if you followed me, you know that I have been warning people that Bryce Young over CJ Stroud at 101, I'll just say it right now, was a blunder. And CJ Stroud has looked better so far in the first few weeks. Obviously, week 3, Bryce Young is hurt, but Bryce Young had issues with, the size issue is the most obvious one, but also there were going to be some issues with him figuring out how to deal with pressure, etc. And not just CJ Stroud looking good, number 4 in the NFL in passing yards through the first 3 weeks, but also you look at there have been 4 drops on CJ Stroud passes this season so far, which is among the league leaders. You know who hasn't dropped a catch and who has looked phenomenal the last 2 weeks is Tank Dell. And this is how you maximize a good quarterback's potential and immediately make him relevant in fantasy football is you tie him to good receivers. And Tank Dell, someone that the Breakout Finder was pretty high on. And CJ Stroud, someone that I was very high on. My one issue with this Houston offense for redraft purposes, for Pickens early in the season, was going to be, is that connection going to be there right away? The question has been answered. Tank Dell, the wide receiver 7 in fantasy football from weeks 2 to 3. So the questions have been answered. I'm all in on the Texans offense. Going to keep buying until they adjust.
Yeah, I did a chop up video to show people after week 1 takes routes in week 2 and just talked to him and said, listen, I've already got him, picked him up everywhere I could. And I gave out CJ as one of our first over picks of the season on this show. And I still remember your response. You're like, when you saw it, you're like, CJ, I'm like, man, so let me be clear. I hate Ohio State with a pure unadulterated passion. I'm a Hawkeye. I actually went to Iowa. I don't like Ohio State. However, I like winning money, and talent is talent. And it is criminal that they thought Bryce was going to be a better NFL quarterback than CJ. See, I've learned how to watch footwork, how to watch reads, how to watch progression, and he has it. CJ's got it. He's making the right steps. He's got a cannon. That offense is going to be fun. They're going to lose a ton of games, but it's going to be fun to watch.
Absolutely. And speaking of rookies, we're going to get into a few more coming up right now. But before we get into Thursday night football and before we start talking about this, what I expect to be a phenomenal game, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Hey, so many ask me, what's wrong with sportsbooks? Why so many of them fail? The answer is simple. They don't innovate. They're just casino sportsbooks on a phone. That's all they've been. There are a few that are doing a good job. We partner with them. Most of them, not so much. Until Bet Openly came along. Bet Openly said, hey, we're going to innovate. We're going to do something groundbreaking. We're going to have peer-to-peer betting in all states, and you pay 1%. When you win, you pay just 1% on your winnings. You heard that right. It's 1%. With code Underworld, you qualify for just that 1% transaction fee on Bet Openly. It gives you ultimate flexibility to set your own lines and browse lines that others have set. Think about it. That's what betting should be. And now that is the reality. BetOpenly.com. The code is Underworld. Check it out.
Welcome back to the Player Profiler Pick Em Hour, where we are talking about some rookies, but now finally diving into the Thursday Night Football slate. We just talked about Tank Dell, and there is a question in chat: Tank or Addison PPR rest of the season? That's a tough one. I'll go Addison rest of the season just because Minnesota is the more well-oiled machine going forward. Addison, to me, is going to get that volume, which you cannot guarantee necessarily rest of the season from Houston. So I'll take the Kirk Cousins-Addison connection there.
Yeah, I think unfortunately there's going to be weeks where they're just so, Houston just gets run out of the building sometimes. Now, that's that to say, I also think there's a chance they keep this pass rate up because they have to. Not because they want to, but because they have to. It's close for me, actually, rest of season. I'm a big Tank guy. It's not as big a gap as people would think it is.
Yeah, I agree. And if you do follow Player Profiler on social media, I mean, I already took semi-victory lap on Tank Dell a few days ago because Jason Allwine, shout out Jason, don't know if he's watching, but shout out Jason Allwine, who is heavily in part of running our socials. He asked us to make a short clip, give us one player pre-week 2 to stash in week 2 that's about to break out, and my pick was Tank Dell. So I already took my victory lap there, but yeah, I would take Addison rest of the season. We're about to get into Thursday Night Football. Let's just dive right into it. So it's the Detroit Lions versus Green Bay Packers. Vegas expects this to be the best game we've had so far on primetime. It is a 1 to 1.5 point spread in most places. looks like a decent somewhere around, I believe, 45.5 game total for this game.
Yep,
There is
it's up to 46 now.
46. There we go. So already, I think we get a good game, and there is a little bit of uncertainty. But when there is uncertainty, there's probably value sitting around somewhere, right? So Christian Watson, big for a season-long entry. He said, I plan to play on Thursday. Now, a lot of players say that. We'll see when it actually happens, but it is the reason you don't necessarily see all the pick'ems that you would usually see by game time. It looks like some of them have been added actually very recently. It looks like Tavion Wicks, for example, has been added. Jaden Reed has been added. And then on the Lions side, another one, big first season-long entry, David Montgomery. Looks like he was going to miss a few weeks, but I think looks like he's trending towards playing tomorrow as well. So two guys, big first season-long entry, but obviously just in general, hope to see them on the field. And of course, there's Aaron Jones as well. Going to be relevant for fantasy, obviously, but relevant for this Packers offense as well. Trevor, before we dive into picks, any quick comments on either side from these uncertain injury reports?
Yeah, obviously that's why the Detroit doesn't have those up right now for them, because what Gibbs number is versus what it is without Mr. Montgomery is very different. So I'll be interested to see there. I think there's going to definitely be some value there. Detroit has one of the better offensive lines in the league. If Monty plays, I think we'll be able to probably find some value there. But we're going to have to wait and see. And then Watson is interesting to me. I actually think I want him to play because I think he'll help our pick today. And it'll help it. I like it whether he plays or not. I think it helps our pick more if he runs because he's going to stretch out the field. Right? We know where Jordan Love's at this season. Crushing ADOT, just hucking the ball down the field. So it's been interesting to watch so far. And I don't know if everybody got to see, but in our Discord, I gave up one of our Yak Daddy picks. So you'll see now they're offering Yak for the players. We gave one out for free to our player profiler members in our Discord. We hit it over the weekend. I love me some Yak. So I think there's just certain teams and certain people that do a better job of it. And because I saw some pop up today right as we were coming on the show.
I'm super excited to get right into it for many reasons, but one of them being, obviously, I'm fully on board with you that Christian Watson is going to help our pick. But let's start with our first pick for this one, and it's going to be a guy on Detroit. Trevor, you're going to pitch this. Which Detroit receiver, quote unquote, are we targeting here?
So this was, we say receiver because that's really what these roles are turning into now. These guys are coming out. They're not being used like traditional blocking tight ends. If you follow me at all, you know how much I love Sam LaPorta. I have some Waller exposure in season long, but in season long, I was going Kincaid, LaPorta, Musgrave all day long later because then I'm getting top wide receivers, top running backs. I thought there was going to be a ton of value, especially in this pass offense. So we're going to target Sam LaPorta this week, and let's talk about why. So what is Sam LaPorta doing in the Detroit offense? First, he's run 74 routes in 3 games, folks. He has run 74 routes in 3 games as a tight end. That is amazing. Here's the next coolest part of that. He's run 37.8% of them from the wide receiver slot, not from the tight end slot, not from inline, not from the slot. He's run them from the outside. So almost 40% of his routes, they're lining him up outside because they can't defend him. We saw him have a great week last week, and I think he's going to have it again. So Detroit has the 4th best passing block matchup this week versus that Green Bay front. So I think Goff will have time. And we know what Green Bay's weakness is. When you start looking at the math, doing the data of what they give up and where they go, Green Bay struggles with that slot over the middle position. So I don't think we see a lot of LaPorta out wide, but I think we see him in there. And then you add into a guy that has 0 drops this season, 0, right? He's getting 10.33 yards per route, and he has 21% of the target share on a team with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, that is he's everything you want him to be. They give up Hawk. They don't have to pay him all the money, and they just plug and play another amazing tight end. Detroit has figured out how to draft him. So I was looking at this, and I started going, okay, where are we at on Yak? Like, where are we at there? I don't think he's done. I don't think he's done enough Yak yet to really warrant that 18.5 number, even though I think he could go over. It's there, but that's not where I want to target in this game. I just don't. He could hit this and not hit that. So we're going to target over 42.5 receiving yards this week. Right? We've seen it going up. We're at the over just went up to 46 on the point total, and it's all for those things we're talking about. He's got 133 air yards. He's getting 20% of the air yard share. I'm pulling up all my stats on him right now. One cool thing he does have, though, he has 76 yards of yak this season. So I'm really staring at that as we go through the show. Like, you're going to get me thinking about it. I think there's guys that present well, but I think he can get 5 catches for, 50 yards pretty easy, and he could not hit that. I also think this is a game where we can see another, 6 to 8 catches and, 70 to 100 yards and a touchdown out of him again.
I love me some Sam LaPorta, so no matter how you were going to target him, I was going to be on board. I was eyeballing that 4 receptions, but there's multiple ways to target Sam LaPorta in this matchup. I love that he's facing a Green Bay defense that allowed 5 receptions and 44 yards from Cole freaking Kmet, who you combine his other 2 games, he hasn't done that, and 6 receptions and 52 yards from the Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts platoon, which it's disgusting that I have to say Kyle Pitts is in a platoon, but that's the situation. And they allowed Jonnu Smith to have some production there as well. So I love that you're going with receiving yards.
I don't want to lose on the hook. I can really, really debated a bunch on going LaPorta, 5 receptions. Again, this is something he could get 3 receptions for 45 yards pretty easy with, we just talked about what is, he's getting per yard route run, what his ADOT is, what his air yards are. I mean, the guy has 133 air yards so far in 3 games from a tight end position. Those are what we want, right? He's got 22 targets. He has 18 receptions. But if they decide to go after him there, I think his yards are a little bit safer this week as I look at the math and look at some of our modeling projections.
Love it. Sam LaPorta, certified good player. A phrase I like to use for players where not everybody is caught up on how good they are. The first rookie tight end in NFL history in their first 3 games to have at least 5 receptions in each of their first games. And like you said, he's getting the air yards as well. So certified good player who's lining up at wide receiver, which is key here because he's going to play like a receiver. And a lot of people ask me, why do you keep going back to these rookies, very early in their career, especially if the lines are still low, like maybe they know they know more about, why are their projections that low? They're low for a reason. You'll notice that for the rookies that are certified good players, the lines don't adjust that quickly. And that's why we love targeting these guys who we know how good they are. The team has shown that they know how good they are, and we're going to target them until the line adjusts. Speaking of rookie tight ends, there were 2 rookie tight ends this NFL's offseason that I was very high on, which is weird to say because it's just a complete middle finger to the don't back rookie tight ends narrative for fantasy purposes, especially in redraft. And I just said, I don't care. I'm going to target Sam LaPorta, and I'm going to target at the back end of drafts Luke Musgrave. And he's on the board in this Sam LaPorta versus Luke Musgrave. Oh, where's the horn? Where's the horn?
Uh-oh. That's a good sign. I like it. It's going in the right direction.
I forgot that I have to stop the horn. We have a Luke Musgrave bump down, and I'm taking it. Luke Musgrave higher than 35.5 receiving yards. First of all, let's talk about Luke Musgrave, the player. So if you look, which you can do, playerprofiler.com/Luke-Musgrave, you can look up the stats that we're reading off here. You can look at the profile. Look at all this green for athleticism, right? And this is just the perfect kind of profile that I want to target, especially at tight ends. If you target elite athletes at tight end over the course of their careers, you're probably going to succeed, right? Because this profile is absolutely elite. Now, you look at what he's done so far this year. First game, 4 targets, 3 receptions, but look at the air yards, 72 air yards. There was a broken play in there from the Bears as well. Now, the next week he faces the Falcons, and he gets a red zone target, which is showing me that he's starting to get some trust. And in week 3, right back at it, 6 receptions on 8 targets for 49 yards. Air yard data not quite in yet, but he produces and he outdoes this projection in 2 out of his 3 games. Now he faces a Detroit defense that, like Green Bay, has given a production to tight ends. Musgrave, who is, by the way, number 1 in the NFL in tight end ADOT, right? He's getting the long passes. 4 targets, 3 targets, 8 targets, like we discussed. But tight ends so far versus Detroit, Colby Parkinson and Will Dissly had 41 yards and 35 yards. Colby Parkinson and Will Dissly.
Say it for the people in the back.
Jonnu Smith had 37 yards on 5 receptions. Now, why are we getting a discount, and why do we even see a bump down from 1 yard as we're locking this in? Is because Christian Watson is likely trending to be in. But you mentioned it at the top of the show, and I love that you did, because if Christian Watson plays, the defensive attention is going to him. I think that if someone should be getting a discount and you should be lower on him if Christian Watson is lining up, it's Romeo Doubs. I mentioned last show, and I mentioned in the offseason, that Jordan Love is going to put up some numbers this season. So far, he is. Why? Because he has certified good players around him. Luke Musgrave, I mentioned him as one. Jaden Reed, I mentioned him as one. I did not mention Romeo Doubs. There's a reason, right? And it's because he is not a great player. People victory lapping that he has 3 touchdowns. Oh, by the way, despite the 3 touchdowns and the Packers offense click on all cylinders, he's a fantasy wide receiver 25. He's not even a wide receiver 2 player, despite him being the quote-unquote wide receiver 1. That's the guy you should be lower on if Watson lines up. The guy you should not be lower on is the guy who is a certified good player, certified great athlete. He was a 2nd-round draft pick. I'm locking it in right now before we get a maybe bump back.
All right, hold on. All right, I got to pause you, though.
Let's hear it.
I'm going to flop back. I'm going to look at some modeling stuff. We're going to switch back to LaPorta. We're going to switch back to LaPorta reception. So worst case, I think we get a push. Best case, he gets 6-7 receptions and we win. And I want to give Ahaan a little backup here. Do you know who has the most routes run on the Green Bay Packers team this season? Musgrave has 80. He has the most route run. Their tight end has the most route run of any guy, and over half of them are out of the slot, not in line, out of the slot. They've used him out wide, not as much. He has, I think, 8 or 9 so far out wide, but they're putting him in the slot. They're going to get him open. And like I said, if Watson plays, I think this line goes up because they're going to try, right? Watson's going to open up the field, and Detroit is not good at defending tight ends. They are, I was looking it up earlier. They're giving up, they've given up 56.9 fantasy points to tight ends and a 70% catch rate so far. Like, that's from a fantasy perspective, that's who you want to attack.
Trevor, can you say the statement about Luke Musgrave routes run just one more time? I have a button ready.
Yep. Musgrave is leading Green Bay in routes run this season with 80. He is by far their number 1 wide receiver, and he's a tight end.
Woo! Woo! That's what you love to hear. You want players who are good with opportunity, and I like that you switched, Sam LaPorta to higher than 4 receptions. I think at worst case scenario, we get a push, and if Musgrave hits,
Yep.
we're still winning money. So the fact that you need 3 or less to lose this entry from
Yeah,
LaPorta.
that's the. I really like his yards over, but the safe. So this is a good time, I think, to talk about some DFS theory here. So as we're doing this and Ahaan's locking this in, so the thing we have here is what if he gets 5 catches for 39 yards? What if he gets 4 catches for 39 yards? The worst case is now it's a push with a guy that, as we just explained, is a target monster in that offense. Like, it's not a little bit that he's a target monster, right? Again, he's on the same team as Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that's the only guy that has more routes, more targets, and he's getting 20% of the air yard share, and he has no drops. So tight end's changing. I'm also a big Dalton Kincaid guy. I think Buffalo's going to figure it out that using Knox instead of him is incredibly stupid. Like if they're putting Kincaid in that role, I think it's big. But you'll see, guys, as we go through, we want to be able to like game stack stuff. So that's one of the advantage Underdog has versus trying to do a single game parlay at a book and actually betting it. The books juice it down to you. So instantly, as soon as you make it an SGP, they juice it down. This gives us the ability to have a quarterback, a wide receiver, right? We can attack different games that we want to attack, just literally the same as I play DFS. When I play a lot of DFS weekly, there's game environments where we're trying to attack. So that's something to really keep in mind here. And as always, you saw we're using a half unit bet. It's a long season. Don't go blow out your bankroll on one game.
Love it. We are going to probably either individually or as a team, we're probably going to do a stack for this game, right? And it's a great point you bring up about once we have more information about David Montgomery, about Aaron Jones, about Christian Watson, there's time between that announcement, probably at least 30 minutes between those announcements and tip-off. That's the time you should be in the Player Profiler Discord in the Pickens channel, because we're going to construct an entry where, like you said, the correlation between these picks are not accounted for in the payout, right? So you want to stack maybe a pass catcher and their quarterback, or maybe you want to fade Romeo Doubs, wink, wink, while also backing Luke Musgrave. We'll do the math for you, and we're going to find out once we get information, we're going to find out our best strategy to playing what I think will be an excellent game. There's a lot of, there's revenge that the Packers need here after they got eliminated by the Lions last year. It's going to be a good time.
Yep. And remember to bring up Doubs, he's going to get Sutton this week. Sutton is going to shut Doubs down. I really like Sutton, for you guys that aren't insane on the defensive side and nutsos like me and Ahaan that are really looking at matchups and this kind of stuff and are relying on us, understand that that's a very tough matchup in the NFL this week. It's not good for him. So it'll be interesting to see how they try to target that and go against it. So, and I actually like the Sun Gods matchup this week. I think he gets Nixon. And if he gets Nixon, I think we're going to see 350, 400 yards out of Goff and a lot of offense here.
Love it. Now, you mentioned DFS. Another thing you can do on Underdog, besides just the pick'ems, is the company is called Underdog Fantasy, right? It was originally made as a fantasy platform where you can play DFS, you can do weekly lineups, and obviously a lot of you who are hardcores, who are members of Player Profiler, you've been drafting on Underdog. But if you want some DFS strategies, there's another show just for DFS run by our guy Chase Vernon, The Big Tilt. So you want to join in on The Big Tilt and with Chase Vernon and set your DFS lineups. And speaking of lineups, let's answer some questions from chat. Someone said, do I trade Tony Pollard and Christian Kirk for CMC? I'm saying no. I think Tony Pollard and CMC are pretty much the same fantasy profile. I had Pollard right next to CMC in my rankings.
Yeah, I know. I don't make that trade. There's not enough gap between Pollard and CMC, and you got to give up Kirk, who is going to get used to this offense. Like, they're going to figure this out. Like, you saw just even in the second half, like, Doug finally said, I'm taking this over, and you saw him start to click again. He's a really, really good coach, and he will figure out. There's too much talent on that Jacksonville team, but I think you're just giving up too much. Even though CMC looks like CMC, I think when it's all said and done, Pollard's and him are not terribly far off fantasy points wise.
Yeah, and if for those of you who don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to bounce back and you're calling him a fraud after 3 weeks, I would much rather trust the sample size of the prospect profile plus the last 10-ish weeks of last season than your little 3-week agenda pushing sample size, right? So I'd much rather trust that data. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to bounce back. The offense is going to look better, and Christian Park's going to be a part of that. Someone else says start Kittle or LaPorta. I'm not even trying to be vibey. I'm starting LaPorta this week. San Francisco faces a Cardinals defense that is bad, yes, against tight ends, but they'll also probably be playing from ahead from the get-go. And I say there's no way Arizona plays from ahead in back-to-back weeks. But if San Francisco is playing from ahead, Trevor, you can attest to this. Kittle is not a tight end. He's a blocker.
Yeah, so that's game script-wise. I actually rank LaPorta ahead of Kittle this week. I'll probably have LaPorta as my number. It might even be number 2 tight end this week in my rankings, above Andrews. It's real close. Kittle will be, 6-ish, 7-ish, somewhere in that Waller range. But I go LaPorta here. I think this is a high-scoring game. And the challenge is when Kittle goes off, he goes off. And we saw last week, Kittle had a nice floor game for me last week, which I like to see, right? He got 16 points in PPR. It was just a nice, solid week. However, I want upside, right? I'm trying to, score 150 to 200 points a week on my teams. And I think LaPorta really offers that this week.
And if you take a look at our player rankings, I'm not going to, you got to take a look at the player rankings that, Dory Austin and Billy Moose.
Look, I haven't peeked at ours yet.
So Kittle and Sam LaPorta are next to each other. But I will say having Sam LaPorta as a tight end too is not a hot take by any means this week. And I may or may not exactly agree. But Billy Muzio and Dory Austin put in the work for these weekly rankings. They do projections. They stay up late nights to grind. I was doing that myself a year ago, and I can attest to how much work they put in for that. So check out our seasonal or our weekly rankings as well as the seasonal rankings to help you make decisions like this. Let's talk about one final thing that Underdog is offering this week before we get out of here is the $100K Sunday special. So like we brought up last week, Underdog is giving you the opportunity to basically enter a lottery where you can win thousands of dollars each year or each week. And all you got to do is place an entry with the square that's on top in yellow. And this week, the pick is George Pickens.
Yep.
Receiving yards. And that projection is probably going to move a little bit up and down. We have decided we're going to make a well-informed decision about how to play the George Pickens square and what to pair it with. And we will do that. And the rest of the Sunday slate, we're going to be researching that as lines come out in sportsbooks and as projections come out on Underdog. And that is why you want to, one, follow the Underdog pick generator so you can get in on these early. If Van Jefferson, I think a better example is probably Zay Flowers, right? He had 48 receiving yards last week. That line was at one point 51.5, and it closed at 56.5. If he landed on 53, you would be begging for the Underdog pick generator so that you can get in on that early, right? So that's why you want to follow the Underdog pick generator so that you can get these picks when they're out. You want to be in the Discord so you're notified. Trevor, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, it's stay watch. I'm going to have picks going up. Ahaan's going to have picks going up during the week, and we're there to ask questions. You can come in and are in the Discord. Come talk to us. We'll walk you through stuff. One thing I am seeing, we're seeing lines a little bit earlier today. We got a few more lines out on Wednesday than we normally have so far, so that's interesting to me as we get going here this season. So normally they're not really giving us everything from the books until Thursday, so we can see. But there's definitely, I think, going to be some value this week,
including Thursday Night Football. Once we get injury news, stay tuned in the Discord. We might have a little what I like to call piss missile. We might have a 5-pick for you, last minute sweat But before that, Luke Musgrave, higher than 35.5 receiving yards, and Sam LaPorta higher than 4 receptions, which means you get a push if he lands at exactly 4. That is our collab 2-piece. We will see you on Friday for the bonus show, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Player Profiler Network, after hopefully we extend our Thursday Night Football record to 3-1.